Hi everyone, this is Dan, and this is the new Teen Titans Volume 7, collected trade paperback by DC. Again, and today we are going over Tales of the Teen Titans, the Judas Contract, Book 3, also known as Issue 44, There Shall Come a Titan. Pretty interesting. A lot of the covers of this Judas Contract run are very similar in structure for what George Perez was trying to do. So again, we've got basically the background image, which is sort of foreshadowing what we're going to be talking about in this issue. Here is Robin in his brand new costume as Nightwing with the Teen Titans in the background. You've got the image of Vietnam and war behind Deathstroke, the Terminator, as he was called in these days, Slade Wilson. And then you have this new character who we're about to talk about, with the image of all of these other past characters, supporting characters for this storyline. So anyway, let's jump right into this. Again, this is written by Marv Wolfman, art by George Perez. In this case, it's a combination inking team, DiCarlo and Giordano, lettered by Todd Klein, Adrian Roy coloring pretty much all of this Titans run for the most part. Anyhow, also, interesting enough, co-edited by Wolfman and Perez. So, last we left off on the Teen Titans, basically Robin had barely survived Deathstroke killing him. And the other thing that occurred during that issue was him going around like a detective, very Batman-like, discovering that pretty much the rest of the Titans had been taken care of. We were left on a cliffhanger with Deathstroke delivering the Titans to Hive for them ostensibly to be killed. And he's introduced to these two characters who seem to know quite a lot about the Titans and Deathstroke. So we get into this issue and we find out that this is basically Slade Wilson's ex-wife, and this is his son. And she goes into sort of the history of how she met Slade Wilson many, many moons ago when he was just a soldier in the army. Him being part of sort of a crack elite special forces kind of team, and their training and how they kind of fell in love during their training. It's interesting stuff. If not a little bit hard to believe at times. You got to remember, this is since this is the 80s, then that must mean that these people were, working together in the 60s and the 70s. Or maybe even before that, maybe even World War II, right? And this whole, I guess, backstory of Slade Wilson, while it's interesting, it's kind of at times hard to believe, at least for me. Just all of a sudden, like, this woman here is a captain, and she's like the world's greatest gunfighter, I guess. I mean, not that couldn't happen. It just seems kind of implausible for this time period. But anyhow, it ends up she trains Slade Wilson in the art of using guns all over the place and being basically Deathstroke. And after sort of graduating this camp and being elite commando, and also reuniting with his old friend Wintergreen, who have an awfully close relationship here, really close relationship here. They end up falling in love, getting married, having kids. He goes to Vietnam, and turns out he volunteers for a program where they do some experimental drugs to stimulate his adrenal gland. And initially, he goes into shock and almost becomes paralyzed. And he gets medically retired from the army. But what ends up happening is that it just took longer for the effect of that drug and experimental program to actually come into effect. And he actually he did obtain the superpowers that the program was attempting to give him. So there's also a little short episode here where he basically breaks the army's command or orders and rescues his friend Wintergreen from the Viet Cong, and as a result gets dishonorably discharged from the military. He ends up getting into other things after that dishonorable discharge. He becomes a hunter, doing big game stuff. Ends up having a lot of, basically gathering a lot of money and wealth and influence, and a surprising amount of wealth and influence, which makes his wife very suspicious. You can kind of see where this is going now. So one night, a bunch of hoodlums break into their house. Her old training kind of kicks in. She's able to kick their butt and kill a bunch of them. Again, somewhat unbelievable, but okay, Marv Wolfman, I'll go with it. But she gets knocked out by some gas, and that ends up allowing the last guy to kidnap her son, Joseph. He had two sons, Grant and Joseph. Grant being, for those of you who remember, the Ravager. He was one of the early enemies of the Teen Titans. Ended up killing himself by overusing the drugs that gave Slade Wilson his power. And Joseph is this young man right here with the blonde curly hair and the mutton chops. So the revelation that we pretty much all knew was coming occurs. Slade confronts his wife and shows her that, yeah, I'm Deathstroke, earlier version of Deathstroke, right, without the cross right here. They go out to, rescue his son, but when the kidnappers basically present Deathstroke the choice, like, hey, either reveal your client's name or we kill your son, Slade refuses to reveal his client's name because his word is bond. That's a very Deathstroke thing, right? He's kind of like the ultimate mercenary. So he ends up betting on himself, attempts to kill the guards before they can kill his son, but it's a little too late, and they basically slit his throat to the point where he can't speak anymore, but not to the point where his son dies. So he technically saves his son's life, but at the cost of making him mute, right? And what ends up being explained later is basically the breakdown of their family. Obviously, for her, Adeline is her name, Adeline Kane. She can no longer trust Slade anymore, and she ends up actually being the one that takes out his eye. And at that time, she kind of tells him, like, ever since then, they've been kind of hunting him down and tracking him. They've been able to find out where he's hiding the Titans right now, which pushes Robin into action. Says, hey, you tell me, I'm gonna go save them. She's like, you're not even Robin anymore, you're technically retired. It's like, oh yeah, well, I'm not retired anymore. Runs up to his to go find his porn stash, his costume. And after some sort of really, actually, this is kind of fun, to be honest. Like, I'm not a DC fan, some of you guys know that, but I gotta say, there's like a historical nature of the inner monologuing going on right here by Robin as he breaks apart his new costume and he considers where he came from. Batman, Superman. In the context of the Titans, his relationship with Corey, Starfire, right? And then here we go. We're introduced to Nightwing. And this is a really important, like, there's a trademark and then there's a registered here, not bad. So again, historically speaking, this costume is the original Nightwing costume, and it is, it's pretty flamboyant. It feels very, very 70s, even though this is kind of technically early 80s at this point, or mid 80s. But it's an important piece of comic book history because Nightwing, for those of you who don't follow DC Comics, very, very famous, very, very popular DC Comics character, especially among the ladies, interestingly enough. And so Robin is retired, and Nightwing, the hero's story begins right here. In addition, we get introduced to a new Titans member of the Titans, in this case, Jericho. This is Slade Wilson's son, Joseph. And we also get a demonstration of his powers. Turns out he can creep you. No, I'm joking. He can basically, if he gets eye contact, he can take over your mind and your body. It's kind of cool. It's very, very similar to Karma from the New Mutants. In fact, I wonder which one came first. Let me see. When was this published? 84? I wonder if it was the New Mutants first or the Teen Titans first? Or I should say, not necessarily the New Mutants. I wonder if Karma was first or was Jericho first. Well, they probably weren't the first two characters to do this anyway, but kind of the point that I was trying to say here. So, kind of makes Nightwing, freaking Dick, look like an idiot here as he punches him. And the two of them kind of agree to team up and go rescue the Teen Titans. What's very interesting is the creation of this character. This character was created mostly by George Perez, and he had a dictate to Marv Wolfman when he created this character. He wanted the character to be an artist character. So one thing about Jericho, especially through these early issues that you'll notice, is that he always communicates basically 100% through his gestures and through the art. And then there's some narration done by Marv Wolfman to kind of explain things that aren't necessarily clear. But George was very strict with Marv that he didn't want Marv to use thought balloons with Jericho. He wanted everything to be kind of shown through the actions and the art. Very interesting character, to say the least. And I think it's kind of here's the deal. You know me, I'm a big fan of thought balloons, but it kind of works with Jericho because all the other characters talk so much and think so much that it's kind of interesting to sort of see the mystery of this character as it goes through. Now, I will say this: his design is very odd for me personally. I know DC does have a lot of characters like this. They look like they're from like Roman Greek pantheon kind of look. I've always thought that was very weird about DC. I never really got it for me personally. But his character design reminds me so much of like that old Hobbit cartoon. I don't know if you guys remember the Hobbit or the Lord of the Rings cartoon from like, I don't think it was the 70s or was it the 80s? I forget, but it was a really, really old one. I think it technically was animated by like a Japanese team, but I'm not really sure. God, what was the name of that damn freaking cartoon? I'm trying to remember right now, but that's what his design reminds me of. It reminds me of that old Hobbit, Lord of the Rings cartoon. And it feels a little out of place, at least in the context of, you know, the Teen Titans and the way that they look, right? But anyhow, they go off to go rescue, and we're going to finish this up in Tales of the Teen Titans Annual number 3, which is the finale for the Judas contract. Great cover, by the way. And that's it. So, penciling. Usually I say pencil things. I kind of messed around today because I was like, you know what? I've been like just copying panels. Let's try to make something. So I was kind of working on a scene right here. So this has nothing to do with the story, by the way. This is just basically Nightwing, Robin, and Jericho kind of working on a case. So I didn't pencil in the dead body right here. But I was just kind of working on scenes and other stuff, right? I think this would work as a smaller panel. I don't think this is good enough as a big widescreen shot panel. So like this would probably work if this was like a 7 or an 8 panel page, and I'd have to compress it down a little bit more. But yeah, no, I was just kind of messing with drawing like my own scene, right? And trying to get, like, this is 1 point perspective, trying to get better proportions in this. I didn't use a ruler at all this. I kind of just went off instinct and what I know about figures, and it's okay. What I would say here is I think his legs are too short when I'm looking at it right here. And then I think Nightwing's legs are also a little too short as well. Also, his chest is fucking massive. I don't know why I made his chest so huge. His chest is like a freaking barrel, dude. He's like freaking built like a truck or something. I do like the way I should have finished penciling this. I thought this was like kind of a cool pose and everything. Just looking at a dead body, kind of looking at you while these two guys are like, what the fuck happened? Kind of them investigating a scene and whatnot. Now, most of these penciling exercises I'm doing for this Judas contract was more for fun and also just educational purposes. And also kind of get to kind of mess with the character design. Actually, the more I pencil it, the Nightwing costume, I mean, it's still very 70s-ish and kind of weird, but it's kind of an interesting design. I like the wing inlets right here around his chest. I kind of like that. This still feels weird, and I still feel weird even drawing it. I'm kind of like, man, this looks like, am I drawing like a bard for like a D&D campaign or something? Anyhow, guys, that's the video. Let me know what you think. We only got one more left, and we'll be done with the Judas contract. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Hit the bell for notification. By the way, I don't know if some people will notice, this is with a brand new phone, so I don't know how this is going to end up, but we'll see how it works. Anyhow, guys, that's the video. I will see you next time.